So let's see, it's what time is it? 2 minutes after time. So let's give 1 more minute and then we'll go from there. Okay. Let's see if we're going to get right. Let's go. 1 minute, wait, and then we'll carry on. Okay, so it is time for us to proceed. And like we mentioned earlier, let me get out of here. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity, right? So let's see. Does anybody have any ideas, any questions so far? I know Jordan mentioned what are we going to cover today. So again, I have everything in our shared folder and also in a Google Drive. So what questions do you have before I get started? Or questions?
I think I'm ready to get started.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so as usual, we're always going to start with our recap of the schedule. We started off with introduction and also talked about the big five: Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. Talked about IT career paths, hardware and software, the two main things that make up a computer. And then we went ahead and also talked last week about internet and the web. So now that we understand how these computers get connected and also how it leads to us having a web, which is a connection of web pages, it's time for us to talk about security. Security is imperative in everything you do, right? Like I mentioned before, you cannot leave the house without locking the door. You cannot leave your car without locking it up, and so on and so forth. So next week, we'll talk about database concepts, and in cloud computing after that, and talk about programming, software, and probably from then on, it'll be a lot more general purpose, more this business oriented. Okay. So that said, today we're going to break down our discussion to include CIA Triad. That's the first thing we'll talk about. Obviously, we'll talk about a quick introduction, talk about what cybersecurity is, and then we'll go into CIA Triad. We'll talk about threats and vulnerabilities. We'll also talk about hackers and actors. You know, those are what they call threat actors per se. And then we'll talk about enterprise security, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to get to this corporate level. How does the corporate environment take care of their security? And then finally, we'll talk about social engineering. While going through all these things, you're going to learn a lot of new words, just like we've been learning all this time, right? So if you have a minute, you can always ask questions, clarifications, or write them down and so on and so forth. But it's going to be really interesting. So that said, I don't believe anybody has any questions, so we can just jump in straight into the content. So let's go back. Right, so first things first, I have the notes out there. You can go through the notes if you prefer. Let me view just that material. Again, it talks about, the CIA triad and all of that, but also, let's see, I forgot to include the PowerPoint. So let me go ahead and do that. That's the problem. Maybe I did, I just didn't have it in that one. Nope, I don't have it in there. So let me go ahead and add the PowerPoint in there. That way we can just use the PowerPoint. And I know it's not yet complete, but that's okay. I should be able to still. Okay, awesome. Okay, so a few things to talk about. Let me open it with Google Slides so it's better. Well, security, in the beginning, we talked about internet and the web. So internet, again, just getting two computers connected. It started with UCLA and Stanford, UCLA in California and Stanford, or sorry, MIT in the East Coast. So once they got connected, they really did not care about security. Nobody is going to be looking at your stuff and so on and so forth, right? All they wanted to do was transfer data from one point to another. Again, I'm saying data, but it could be pictures, it could be letters, it could be tables and so on. But now that we've gotten to the point that the whole world is connected, it becomes a major issue. Who is supposed to be looking at what data? When is the data available? And is the data actually not been tampered by someone else? So when you talk about internet cybersecurity, another term for cybersecurity is usually information security. So InfoSec or information security is the same as cybersecurity. Cyber is used again because, again, maybe it's a fancy word, but it's over the internet, it's over the cyberspace. So that gets to be used more often. But what's the most important thing is the data, the information. That's the most important thing. You want it to be secure. So when you talk about data security, you're not just talking about strong passwords and locking up your computer and stuff like that. It gets more complicated than that, right? We have seen that computer is made up of software and hardware, right? So we want to be able to protect that software and hardware. Back in the old days, in the past, it wasn't a big deal. Just lock the server, lock the server up in a room. You have the key to it. Nobody can get in there. Nobody is stealing your data. But now you have the computers are connected to even cell phones. People do use their cell phones for work, for everything. Even looking at the establishment or the organization, you have cameras that are all connected to the network. You have doors that are all connected to the network. They have to be locked and opened based on a key card that you go and scan it to read and so on. So all of that takes part of or is included as part of your network. Not only that, you use a lot of software. You're using different types of software. Not every department is using every software. Not everybody needs access to all that software or all that data, all the databases, all those things. So you have to be able to secure all of them together, okay? So when we talk about information security, cybersecurity, you're not just talking about taking care of your strong password or two-factor authentication. As a company, they have to look at all of these things put together, okay? So you have to look at, okay, your environment, your space that you work in, the teams that you work with, and all of that together makes up what information or cybersecurity is. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what do you mean? It limits around, first of all, the environment.
Yes, not just okay. I think
information is being shared.
I think you're on mute. I don't know if it was a connection that was breaking up. You are still on mute. We cannot hear you, but so, okay, go ahead.
I'm very sorry, the network issue.
I know. Go ahead.
Yes. So my question was, just to be clear, you are talking about having secure information within a specific network, right?
Yes. Not just within the specific network. We'll talk about all those other things together. But the most important thing is the asset. The asset here, the important thing we have to protect is our information, our data. Okay. In some cases, depending on what your asset is, it might be the person that you're trying to protect. But in this case, you want to protect your data. So to protect your data, you have to make sure that you look at it and in all its entirety. This data is connected to cell phones, to computers. It's locked up in a server somewhere. So all of that access, all of that is what encompasses cybersecurity. And as we get through the rest of this morning or this evening, you get to understand it more. Okay, so hopefully by the end of the next hour, you should be able to have a better picture of what this cybersecurity is all about and what role that you can actually play in it. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome. So now looking at a company, right? There are 6 major areas that you want to look into to make up this security. So the security of a company is broken down into these 6 areas. These 6 areas form like, let's say, a fence around your building. This fence has to stay intact because if this fence is broken in one place, that's where the thieves are going to go in. That's where the attack is going to come from. That's what we call a vulnerability when it's broken. So there are these 6 different factors: the security of your product, the identity and access management, security operations, data security, governance, and cyber intelligence that make up what is known as enterprise security. We'll talk about it in depth later on. But if one of those is not in place, then you're introducing threats to come in and attack through that vulnerability. So you have to make sure as an organization, if they are being hired to be part of that organization, you have to make sure all of these things are in place. That's the job of a cybersecurity analyst or a cybersecurity professional, to be able to go in there and say, okay, this is not in place. Let's do this, let's do that. Because as we say, a stitch in time saves 9. Because the moment that you get attacked, that's when all hell will break loose. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so all of those different pieces make up what we know. But as we'll be talking about everything today, we're going to talk about a lot of these new terms that we're going to cover. Don't worry if you don't know all of them right now, or if you don't know any of them. By the end of today, you're going to understand what all of these are. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So does anybody know any of these right now? Any of those terms that you see on there? They look very familiar and easy to explain, but again, we're going to talk more about it once we complete the course today. Sounds good?
Yes, sounds good.
Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about threat landscape. Okay, before it wasn't a big deal. Nobody was really attacking anybody for one reason or another. But today, if you look at the news, all over the news, they'll tell you about 500 customers, 50 million customers are affected by cyber attack. Customers' data have been breached, new attack here and there. I mean, the landscape right now for threats is enormous. You can't even think about it, okay? So what we want to talk about then is, what is an attack vector? It's usually a specific method that an attacker may use to gain access to corrupt or compromise your computer system. So there are so many new ones out there. In computer science, in IT, as we know, and in many other situations, things change a lot every day. So you cannot tell me that you know all the different types of attacks or the different ways that an attack might take place, because The hackers are out there working hard, trying to figure out a way to get money or to compromise the situation or to beat their competitors. You also, as a cybersecurity analyst or professional, are also supposed to be working hard to make sure that you lock all these holes. They keep trying to get holes in the system to work through it. Your work is to be able to block all those holes so that they don't go through, okay? So there are very many different attack vectors out there that we'll talk about. Let me go ahead. Now, that said, I don't want to jump into this now. I'd rather have to go to the separate part. But yeah, as I said, the attacks, the people that attack your computer, you as a person or you as a company, think about these companies out there that have a lot to lose. They usually have different goals and motivations. We'll talk about this even more by the end of the day. Some of them are motivated by finances. They'll lock up your system. When they lock up your system, they tell you you cannot have access to your data until you pay this amount. It's similar to somebody stealing your phone and telling you, pay me, and then I'll give your phone back. Activism, that's for social goals or politics and so on. They might go into, say, a president's webpage and mess it up and write all kinds of wrong information on there, or attack a company's webpage and delete stuff or put different videos. Say if it's a company that's selling chicken, they might go and put a video of how they are maltreating their chickens and so on and so forth. Espionage, we know about the war that's going on. You have different countries spying on other countries. You have different companies spying on other companies. Again, maybe Barcelona wants to buy a new player. They want to go and spy on Real Madrid network to see if Real Madrid is communicating with the player and so on and so forth. So those are all different ways that, attacks and motivations take place. In some cases, it might just be people trying to, mess around or compete. Like, hey, I can take down FIFA website. Hey, I can take down Faker Food website. Or you just want to boast or for your ego and so on and so forth. So regardless of what the reason is, the main thing is these attacks only happen because some of them, these organizations, may not even be targeted. They might just be vulnerable in one way or another. Think about you live in a neighborhood where everybody locks their door, but you never lock your door. When you don't lock your door, that's when you entertain thieves to walk into your door and steal all your belongings. But if you lock your door always, then you don't have that vulnerability. You don't give people a chance, because sometimes thieves might just be walking around in the parking lot, trying out cars. The car that is open, they enter inside and drive away. Just like if somebody is passing through the neighborhood, they see your door open, obviously they can go into your house. They know there's nothing stopping them. So the goal here is don't give them this opportunity, because most of these attacks are opportunistic. They just try, the door that's open, they go in and do their stuff. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Awesome. So next up, let's talk about CIA triad or triad. Everybody knows what the CIA is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a quick introduction. Does anybody have any question based on that introduction, though, so far that we've talked about as in terms of cybersecurity?
No, not for me.
Okay. So CIA, the CIA we're going to learn today is not the Central Intelligence Agency. The CIA that we're going to learn today is C for confidentiality, I for integrity, and A for availability. We said the most important thing here that we want to secure is our data, is our information. So how do we make sure that our information is confidential? How do we make sure that there's integrity in it? And how do we make sure that it's always available? Those are the three major things that you have to capitalize. For confidentiality, it has to be the fact that the data is only available to those that need to see it, okay? So if you don't need access to that data, you should not be seeing it. Confidential data is only available to those that can see it. Not everybody is supposed to be seeing your email. Your email is your data. It is on the internet. But you want to make sure that cybersecurity methods have been put in place to make sure that not everybody can see everybody's email. Okay, but if you need to see the email, then they have to put your email address on there. So that's an example, a quick example. Not everybody should be able to see all the data that's coming from Microsoft company or Apple company. Only the people in Microsoft can see their information. Only the people in Apple can see their information, not the whole world, even though all computers are connected. Okay. Integrity has to make sure that the data has not been tampered with. For instance, if I send you an email and I tell you that I'm going to Douala tomorrow, if somebody intercepts that email and they change it that I'm going to Yaoundé next week, then that data is no longer true. That makes sure that the data security has been breached. There has been a breach in there. So you want to make sure that the data that you're looking at is not data that has been tampered with. It has to have that integrity, okay? And then lastly, availability is when you want to make sure it's always available. There are some attackers that will go in and make sure that you cannot have access to your data. If you don't have access to your data, then they'll want you to pay to give them access back, or they might be sabotaging your company or another company and so on and so forth. So those are the three main things. They are all important. In some cases, one might be more important than others. You know, so depending on your situation, if you're in transport and you think that confidentiality is more important and integrity is less important, that's fine. Other areas, maybe you're in medicine and you think that integrity is more important, that, hey, if you say that somebody has a kidney disease, that information should reach in there and you should not check tomorrow. It says, no, it's lung disease. And maybe confidentiality is less important, availability is not always important, and so on. So depending on the situation, depending on the industry, or depending on the team you find yourself in, then the importance is always going to vary. Sounds good? Any questions?
So we're talking about CIA tried.
Yes, CIA tried.
So it's just about talking about the confidentiality of your data, or
Yes.
your data, right?
That's true.
The integrity and the availability.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. So if
this
it's,
is
yes, go ahead.
This is in terms of data security.
Yes, this is all in terms of data, or should I say information security?
Information or cyber security, like you say.
Yes, the main goal around cybersecurity, as you see in the notes, which I'm trying to get to, is that data is the most important thing in your organization. No matter what organization you're in, your data is the most important thing. So you want that data is always there when you need it. Which means you want it to always be available. You want that the data should always be correct. It should always be accurate, which means somebody has not come into your system and tampered with the data. Okay, you also want that your data is only accessible to people that are the right people to see it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, so if again, say we have the passport system in Cameroon, and somebody goes into that passport system and creates their own passport, or changes your date of birth, or changes your name and so on, then that data has been breached. That data is no longer accurate. The integrity of that data has been messed up. And that's because of confidentiality as well, because the person that was looking at it was not supposed to be looking at it. It can still be the right person that's looking at it, but they went in and changed it anyway. If for one reason or another, let's say you're going to the airport, they're trying to look at the passport database, it's not working because the system is down, that might be another attack, that they're trying to attack the database to make sure that you don't have access to it. So again, in cybersecurity, the key is that we want all these assets, this data, this information to be available, to be correct, and to only be accessible by the right people. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions?
Please, I have a question.
Go for it.
I'm mainly understanding on integrity.
Okay. So integrity, for instance, okay. If, for instance, let's say my company has it's making chocolate, right? And then Chococam is also making chocolate. They have their data that shows them these are all their customers and their customers' addresses that they are supposed to deliver the products when they have made it. If a hacker or a bad actor goes into their system and changes all those addresses, that means that data no longer has integrity because the data has been tampered with. Okay. So if you change it, then it's no longer the correct data. So integrity is about making sure that your system and your data are what they are supposed to be, and that we can trust the information that it's accurate. Otherwise, when you send somebody to go and deliver your products, now they'll be going to a wrong location and it's affecting your business. Again, integrity, let's say you have, you're sending information from one place to another. You need that information to arrive there intact and not tampered with, because it can be just, say, a phone call. Sometimes when you're calling, it gets relayed, somebody picks in the information and relays it. It's usually known as man-in-the-middle attack. If you're sending an email from here to a different destination, that email can get intercepted. If it's intercepted, they can change the contents of the email. So think again about, say, you are in Limbe and you're trying to send 10,000 francs to somebody in Douala, right? Or you're trying to send a letter, an envelope which has 10,000 francs with a message in there that take this and go and buy me bread for 10,000 and send it back to Limbe. Now, when you get to Mutengene or Tiko, somebody opens the envelope, removes the 10,000 and puts 5,000 and tells you, changes the message saying, buy me Gary for 5,000. When that message gets to the person that is destined to in Douala, they are going to get data that has been tampered with. The integrity of that message is no longer good. So based on that, it's going to, cause a situation, or due to that manipulation, it's going to cause that data not to be trusted. And then it affects the relationship between the person that's sending it and the person that's receiving it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Awesome, very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, so we just covered everything on CIA Triad. Let me go back and make sure that I'm following the right path. So we talked about CIA Triad. Next thing, let's talk about threats and vulnerabilities, okay? Let's see. So what is a threat? Can anybody tell me what do you think is a risk, a threat, and a vulnerability in your own words?
Pardon, please. I didn't get the last thing you said.
So what is your own definition? What would you say is your definition of the word risk, threats, vulnerabilities?
I think threat will mean an attack,
Yeah.
or a potential attack. Let me say a potential attack. Then
Good.
vulnerability now will mean a threat. Let me say threat. A breach, like a weakness. A weakness.
Exactly.
In other words.
Very good. Very good. So that's exactly what it is. When we have hardware and software, we want to make sure that our hardware and our software don't have weaknesses that people can exploit and then take advantage and come in and mess up our data integrity, or mess up our data availability, or mess up the confidentiality, because they will then have access to the software. So there are vulnerabilities that we can see in our operating system, in our hardware, in our software, even in the people that are using it. Okay. Due to these vulnerabilities, you have actors, you have threats that will go through these vulnerabilities, exploit these vulnerabilities, and then gain access to our system and start messing up things the way they're supposed to be. Okay. So what we're going to talk about next is we're going to talk about some of the threats, some of the things that threaten the CIA of our organization or of our system. Okay, again, what are the things that threaten the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of our system? Those are the threats. And then we're also going to talk about the attackers, the people that set up these threats to be able to exploit our vulnerabilities. The key is you don't want to have a weakness. Think about those 6 pillars that we talked about in the enterprise security. Those 6 pillars, if there's a mess, if one is messed up, or if one is not strong enough, if one is weak or one is absent, then you then have a hole, a vulnerability, a weakness that others can exploit and gain access into your system. Make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Awesome. So let's talk about those threats
Yes.
in looking at them in terms of pictures. Let me try to just do a quick demo here. See, I think that's too big. That's too big. All right. So we've talked about CIA, right? Let's talk about threats and vulnerabilities. What is a threat? A threat is something that is going to mess up our system. So malware is a general term that is being used to define different threats. And what is malware? Malware is short for malicious software. Malicious meaning something that is intending nothing good, right? Like the French word mal, you're trying to inflict something bad. Malicious is something bad is going to happen based on that software. So there are different types. There are viruses, there's crypto malware, there's ransomware, worms, trojans, rootkits, keyloggers, and so on. I'm not sure, is anybody familiar with any of these?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm glad you're familiar with some of them. We're going to look at each one of them now in terms of defining them and talking briefly about them, okay? So first off, what is a virus? A virus is malicious code that requires a user's interaction to install and replicate. So a virus is software, right? Code is nothing but software, an application. So you go ahead and install stuff on your computer or install stuff on your phone. You don't know that that stuff that you installed has some malicious code in there. That code is going to tell the software to gain access to some part or to change some system or to delete some files and so on and so forth. And then you start having issues with your computer because the virus has come in and disturbed the system either by deleting, by adding stuff, or by changing stuff in there. But viruses do not work on their own. They need somebody to be able to install them. They need somebody to be able to trigger them. They need some kind of interaction, either by you going to a website and the website has viruses, then it gets installed on your computer, or by you downloading some software, maybe illegal software, and then it puts a virus on your computer. If you have your computer, you don't go to any wrong website, you don't install anything you're not supposed to, you're not going to get a virus. Again, maybe somebody sends you an email and you open that email, you get a virus. Maybe they send you an email with a link. You click on that link or you open a file, you get a virus. So virus, the key information is it requires your user interaction before it can get into your system. Okay. Let's see. All right. So we talked about viruses. Next up is crypto or ransomware. Ransomware, again, it's from two words, ransom and software. So ransom is when you're being held back, you have to pay some money. Obviously, we know about all of that. Crypto, again, has to do with encryption. So crypto encryption, somebody locks up your door and tells you you're not getting into this house until you pay me money. Somebody locks up your business and say you have to pay your taxes before you enter in there. So this is a malicious application that will either scam or scare you to taking some kind of action. Okay, so they tell you if you don't do it, I'm going to delete all your data, or I'm going to make it available on the internet, and so on and so forth. So that's exactly what ransomware is. Okay. Next up, oops, I keep clicking out of
Please,
it.
I have a question on crypto malware.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, since viruses do not act on their own, do crypto malware act on their own?
Yes. So crypto malware, let me give you an example. So if you have let's say an organization, and this has happened many times, unfortunately, I don't have that in here that I can show you, but there's many organizations that because they don't have passwords on their administrative accounts, anybody can go in there. You can have access, go through the back door, you can have access to their system. When you get into their system, you create your own, let's say if you leave your house and you don't lock your computer, and I get on your computer and I create an admin password and an admin account and lock up your computer. That would be an example of crypto malware. But what they do is they create a software that tries to access different systems. The network that it successfully gets into, when it gets into that network, it then triggers its own action to be able to lock down that network, either zip the file with a password or encrypt all the files so that nobody can see it. And then they'll tell you have to pay this amount. If you don't pay it by the end of this week, we're going to double the amount. If you don't pay by the end of next month, we're going to triple the amount. If you don't pay by the end of 3 months, we are going to delete it from your system and put it on the internet for everybody to see. Or put it in, usually they call it the dark web, where they sell information out there about people. So again, it has to do with a weakness is being found in your system. They get in and they encrypt your system, they lock it up from you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome, very good question. All right, so that was crypto malware. It's going to encrypt, it's going to lock your data. It's like I come into your house and zip up, lock up all your doors and tell you, if you don't give me money, I'm not opening a door. All right, next up is a Trojan. So a Trojan is something that disguises itself. That's the word I'm looking for, okay? So it seems to be a friendly software, but it contains hidden malicious software in it. So that had to do, the reason they call it Trojan is because of the Battle of Troy, where the Trojan horse was built, and then the army or the soldiers hid inside the horse when the horse was taken into the castle, into the courtyard, and everybody was celebrating. They fell asleep drunk. Then the soldiers came out and then they were able to attack from inside. So it's something that, I can tell you, hey, this is a wonderful cake. But inside that cake, there's something that's hidden in there that is going to gain access of your inside network that will be malicious for you. So Trojan, again, you download something on the internet thinking that it's a good software, but there's also some software in there hidden. Okay, I can tell you, hey, this is a free software for your Microsoft, free Microsoft for you to use, or this is a free software for doing your DJ stuff. You take that software and install it on your computer, not knowing that I have code in there that's going to monitor all your transactions at the bank or all your savings and so on, and all of that information starts going to me. So that messes up your integrity, your confidentiality, because you're sitting there thinking you're the only one that sees all your emails going back and forth, but somebody else is seeing it too, okay? So next
Okay.
up is rootkits. So this again is two words together. Normally in computer science, when you say root, you're actually talking about admin access. So if I say I want root access to this system, it means I want to get all the way to the roots and have access to everywhere on the system. So when somebody asks you this phone, or if somebody tells you this phone has been rooted, that means the phone has been granted admin, the user has admin access, they can go ahead and change the phone no matter what they need to do. So rootkits again is malicious code that installs itself in the at the operating system or kernel level. And also, more importantly, it avoids detection. So you're not able to detect it, and it's very hard, very, very hard to delete it, because they are also having admin access. They change things and protect themselves so that you cannot remove them from the system. Okay. Next up is keyloggers. Again, think about malware. Malware means malicious software. These are all applications. These are all software that are doing different things on the system that are malicious. So a keylogger in this case would be an application that once you have installed it on your computer, it's going to be reading all your inputs. Every time, let's say it shows that you have typed gmail.com, fine, it knows that you have gone to gmail.com. It sees that you have typed something with @gmail.com. It will know that that's your username. Whatever else you type next, it's going to know that's your password. So it's going to log your keystrokes, and it's also going to get your sensitive information. It knows that you have gone to, I don't know, Amazon.com or PayPal.com, or you have gone to your bank website. You go and enter your username and password. Now it knows the username and password to your bank. And B, knows your credit card number and all that stuff. So it's going to keep monitoring all your information and eventually sell it to somebody or use it when they need it. So it also captures files, uploads it to a remote location, or emails it or stores it for later use. So be very careful what you're installing on your machine. Make sure that it doesn't have all this malicious software. Next up is adware. Adware does not really steal your information. Okay, it's just annoying. Okay, so adware again is malicious software that's installed on an infected machine to deliver ads. It's just going to give you pop-ups about buy this, buy that. But if it sees that you're going to soccer websites a lot, it's going to start giving you pop-ups about soccer, buy this soccer ball, buy this soccer jersey and stuff like that. It's just going to be annoying. If it sees that you're searching for schools in UK or schools in America, it starts giving you pop-ups. Oh, this school is in this state, this school is in that state. It's not really stealing your information. It's just that it can see your information, so that confidentiality is no longer there. Then it can target you with their ads and say, okay, buy this, buy that, spend money here, spend money there, click here, and so on. All right. So next up again, spyware. Again, software.
It does not even understand adware, please.
Okay, you don't understand adware. Very good. So let's go back to adware. So adware, are you familiar with having pop-ups on your machine?
No.
So when you go to a website and then you start having things popping up on your machine, or for instance, if you're using your machine, let's say you go to Google and you search for hotels in Douala. And then the next time you want to open your machine, you start having advertisements of hotels in Douala popping up on your screen or showing up in all your ads. That's because they have software, that the software is in your machine, reading all what you're doing, checking everywhere you type what you do. And then based on that, it's sending that information back to the person that wrote the software so that the person can target you with your advertisements, because there's usually annoying pop-ups that will go up every single time. So if they're targeting you, maybe out of the 100 advertisements that they'll give you, you click on 3 or 4, at least they know that, they can make small money out of you. They don't have any problem because it doesn't really take them time, dedicated time to be there and be doing that. They go ahead and just, write the program once, put it out there. Anybody that gets infected, that's it. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. Now let's talk about spyware. Spyware, again, just like a spy, it's a software that is just capturing your activity and sending it back to someone somewhere. You don't know who it is. You don't even know that it's on your machine. It's just sitting on your machine, not doing anything, just capturing your information and sending it somewhere. So people usually do this, and then they just create like a dump, a stack of information. Now, if you have any of this software installed on your machine and you're working in a corporate environment, let's say you're working at a bank, you're working at a hospital, and then you have access to very, very pertinent information, very confidential information, people's finances, people's health information, and then you come to work with spyware or adware, all of that information gets sucked in. You don't know how much information that will be transmitted to whoever is also having access to this malicious software. So that's why cybersecurity specialists, they come in and make sure that you don't have adware, you don't have malware, any kind of malware on your computer, because of the potential of confidential information getting leaked, or the integrity of data being compromised, or maybe the availability not going to be there at one point. Okay. So everything we're talking about is always going to go back to those 3 things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So next up is botnets. This might be a fairly new term for all of you, but botnet is also a combination of 2 words. Bot is from robot, and net is for network. So botnet is just a network of computers that one person is controlling from a command center. Okay, so it's malicious code that infects large numbers of hosts. It infects large number of computers. And the reason they're doing that is for a purpose of launching large-scale attacks on specific targets. So for instance, I can create a website and say this is a free website for showing all soccer matches. I know everybody that loves soccer, they'll run and be using that website to watch all matches live. But on that website, I silently am going to have malicious code that's going to infect anybody's computer that goes to that website. When it gets infected, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to know, you're just going to be quiet. But tomorrow, when you're asleep or when you're doing anything else, all those computers can be used to send spam. All this spam email, that's one of the ways that they are being sent. They are not being sent from one person's computer. The person creates it and then sends it to all those computers and it's sent. So let me explain further how it works. So this is the attacker. Let me make this bigger. So you have an attacker or a hacker or whatever you want to call it. They have their one computer that they will infect a command and control server. Once they infect this server sends that bot, it sends that virus, or sorry, not virus, sends that malware to infect many other computers. All these computers that are infected, they now become robots. They become zombies. That's what they'll call them. So the attacker can be located anywhere in the world, and they control one or more command control servers. So they're controlling many servers. Each of those servers can control thousands of other computers. These other computers that are being controlled, they are known as zombies or bots. And then you can use it to attack a system. Let's say if you want Real Madrid website to go down, you can all, it's known as a DOS, is denial of service. So think about you know, if somebody comes and knocks on your door once, you wake up and open the door, they leave, another person knocks the next minute, you do the same, and so on and so forth. That's what happens when you go to a website. You go to a website and request for those resources that we talked about last time. Hey, give me HTML, CSS page, give me HTML, CSS document, give me this image, give me this image. But now you're telling all of these guys to go and send that request, that same request at the same time. So it's going to crash that system. So think about somebody who is selling pop-off and beans. The lady that's selling pop-off and beans, she can serve one person at a time. If you send 1,000 people to go at that very moment to go and buy pop-off and beans, that lady will leave everybody and just sit down and not serve anybody. So that's what will happen, because it will be very difficult, too much strain on them to be able to finish or successfully complete all these requests, that the system crashes. So that's what attackers do to make sure that availability is not going to be there for that application. And when that happens, system goes down and they cannot track the person that caused the system to go down, because they use botnets that are being commanded and controlled by the command and control center. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Awesome, awesome, very good. Yeah, so that's an example again of one of the sophisticated ways that attacks happen. Another one is a logic bomb. A logic bomb is, again, a malicious code that is triggered after a period of time based on a specific date or activity. So for instance, I can say, okay, on this particular date, I need this code to run so that this software can do so and so. You know, that's one thing that people were waiting for to happen with Millennium Bob. Or you can also, you know, you might have a bad employee who's going to write a code and says that if you check the log file, if you check the number of active employees, if you don't see my name in there, then go ahead and do this, do that. Okay. So all of those, this malware is based on a particular logic. You can say, okay, if this happens, then do that. If this time happens, or if this time frame has elapsed, then do that, and so on. So that's what a logic bomb actually is. Any questions?
Yes, yes. Me, I do not really understand what was a logic bomb.
Okay, so logic bomb again is like giving instructions, because remember, software is just a bunch of instructions that are telling the computer, do this, do that. So you can write a logic, you can write an algorithm, you can write some kind of condition saying that if the date is Friday and the number of the date is 13, then go ahead and delete this file or add this file or modify this file. So each time that code is running, is going to be checking for that date or checking for that logic. If that logic is satisfied, then something is going to happen to execute that logic, that code. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that's what a logic bomb is. It's just based on a logic, based on some kind of algorithm. All right, so let's talk about backdoors. Backdoors, again, in this case, think about software that is installed for the purpose of opening other ports. So let's say you are going into a party, right? You know, so anybody that gets into that party is like you're installing new software on your computer. So the party, the host is waiting for you to come in. Somebody comes in with their invitation. Okay, you're good, you go in. But a backdoor is that person that's going to go in with their invitation and then go through the back and open the door so that the other people that are not invited should come in. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, but I wish to ask, is it normally default, is it installed by default, or you can still install, like maybe you decided to install a certain app you didn't know? You didn't
Yes.
know that.
Yeah, it's usually the case. You usually don't know. Okay. Or it might be a case where, I create a software, right? I
Mhm.
create a software and I tell you, hey, use this software. It's going to help you watch videos online. Okay. Or it's going to help you download videos from YouTube. Now you
Mhm.
install that software that is going to let me watch videos on YouTube. But that software that you have installed, I also had instructions in there that once they get into your system, they should open me this part, this file, or they should remove the password from this area, that area. When they have removed the password, now I can log into your system because it has gone in and opened the back door for me. So you're installing it, but you don't know that this software is malicious, that it has code in there that's going to cause me trouble. And then the code goes in there and says, okay, once you install me on this machine, remove the admin's password or change the admin's password to 1234. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I've actually witnessed that before, so I understand better now. Mhm.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, those are the different types of threats that we've talked about. Okay, we've talked about viruses, cryptoware, and all of them. The one that we didn't talk about was a worm. Worm is one that does not need human interaction. Okay, we said viruses need human interaction. Worms reproduce by themselves. Once a worm gets into your system, it can attack any system on your network. It doesn't need anybody to be able to click here, click there, interact with it at all. Okay. The other one we didn't talk about was rats. This is that's just an advanced Trojan. Okay, it's a persistent threat per se. It's a real advanced threat. Or yeah, so it's a type of malware that it's really hard for you to remove from your computer. So it's always going to be persistent and make it really difficult for you to get rid of it. Okay. So again, those are the different types of threats that we've talked about. Let's go back. I think I'm going to open this in. Next time I'm going to open it in a new tab. That way I don't have to be going back and forth. Oh, there it is. No, that's not it. Okay, any questions so far? We've talked about the threats. Let's talk about the attackers.
I have a question. This
Yes.
one is a bit away from what you're saying, but I just wish to find out what you think about it.
Yes, go ahead.
There is this there's WhatsApp, the normal WhatsApp,
Yes.
and there are other WhatsApps. Like we have the GB WhatsApp, FM WhatsApp, and all that. So I don't know, because when you install the GB or the FM or the Yo WhatsApp, whatever, there are different WhatsApps which have other features that are actually better than the normal WhatsApp. Yes, so I don't know, because for me, I've always used GB WhatsApp, FM WhatsApp a lot because I really like the features. But then before installing, each time I see it, I always receive a warning that this may be a harmful file and all that. And I still go ahead and then install it.
Yes, yes. So those are the kind of things that now that you're seeing all these different threats out there, nobody has complained about it yet, but it doesn't mean that the guys are not collecting their information and saving it somewhere. That's why the reason you see that is because before an application, before a software is being added to, let's say, Google Play Store or Apple Store, Apple Marketplace, they have to go through a stringent testing phase to test that this, or check their code and make sure that their code is not accessing things that they should not be accessing. Okay, because there are some times that you want to install an app, it will tell you that this app is going to be looking at your contacts. This app is going to have access to your camera. This app is going to have access to your record, what do you call it? Your recording or your audio and so on. And trust me, even we'll talk about it in a little bit. Even the American government can create apps and make it very popular for people to use it. When that app can turn on your GPS by itself, can start recording your voice and video and so on, it happens a lot, you know. And not only that, maybe the app doesn't even have correct administrative access so that someone can hack into your system and gain access to all your pictures because it is not well secured. So the reason that they're giving you that warning is that, hey, we have not vetted this app. We haven't checked it. So you're installing it on your own. You're on your own. If anything happens, this is an unknown source. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, you live in your house, your parents cook you food, and you know that this is food from the house. The moment you go outside and you go and buy food and eat, don't come to the house and complain that your stomach is paining, because they'll tell you that they are not the ones that cook the food. Go back to the place that you cook the food, because just because the food tastes really good doesn't necessarily mean that it is healthy. Okay. Awesome. Very good question. Very good question. That's a good segue for us to actually go into the different types of actors. Actors here is the same as hackers. Hackers here is the same as attackers. Okay. So threat actors can range from beginners to very highly organized countries, nations, and states. Okay. So as you see in here, the main types, you have script kiddies, you have hacktivists, organized crime, nations and states, insiders, and even your competitors can be out there trying to steal or gain access to your data. Because like we said, it is all about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data. So let's check this out and see what's the definition of this. A script kiddie. A script kiddies, these are usually people that just go on maybe YouTube or go online and they'll say, hey, I have a hack for somebody. If you want to hack into somebody's Facebook page, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that. If you want to hack into somebody's WhatsApp, follow these steps and so on. So typically they are looking to see what they can get into. You know, they want to challenge, or the challenge here is just, you know, attraction, and they're not really associated with any organized group or anything, and not funded as well. These are just people that are out there for the joy of it, just testing things out. They have no skills per se. They're just following instructions that are given to them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't need to worry about those people. As long as you have your basic coverage of your security, they're not going to tamper with your system. Now, hacktivists. These ones are guys that are motivated by a particular ideology or a particular cause. Say, I think that happened in Egypt. I can't remember. They actually had you know, when they start creating these hashtags, social media stuff and so on, saying, you know, youths do this, youths do that, or don't do this. You know, it can be well funded sometimes, and they can have skills. You know, they'll go into a website and deface it. That means they'll post things that are not supposed to be on the website, or they could steal information, or they could get personal information and credentials. They could also create these DDoS. This is the second time we're seeing it, distributed denial of service. So that distributed denial of service, which means instead of, let's say there's a campaign going on for two candidates for an election. One candidate might have hacktivists, which will go into hack on the other candidate's website and make sure that the system goes down and they're not able to, you know, do their live campaign and so on. So again, it's not particularly stealthy. They are not hiding anything in public. They want everybody to know that they are the ones doing it. They'll tell you that, okay, I'm going to go into your ministry and mess up the website and so on. They don't have patience. They're not going to sit and plan in. They'll just go ahead and do it when everybody is watching so that they become popular and they make their point. Maybe it's people that are for a particular cause, be it abortion or gay rights or Black Lives Matter and so on, and they decide to use this to affect the integrity of data the availability of data, or even the confidentiality. Okay. So let's go on to next one. There you go. So next one is organized crime. Okay. These ones are people that are motivated for financial gain. So they're really deliberate about it. They have money, obviously, because it's organized crime. And they're very patient and persistent. They will keep trying and trying and trying. Okay. They'll attack point of services, they'll attack ATM machines, credit cards, and so on and so forth. Again, think about all these scammers, people that go in to attack the system or ATM machines and so on. So what they'll do is they'll steal personal information, or they will buy it for sale from the dark web, and they'll be able to use it to target their victims per se. Sounds good? All right.
Yeah.
Next up is nation states and APT. These guys are very, very well organized to begin with. They're very stealthy. You don't see them coming. You don't even know that they're there. We can be talking and they're listening to us, or they're on your phone recording everything. They're well funded and connected. Okay. They have a team. They usually work in teams. You know, think about FBI, CIA, KGB, all these other secret services. They have dedicated departments that are just there for hacking into systems, finding all these vulnerabilities so that they can use it and exploit it for their use. So again, it has to do with cyber espionage. They'll steal your data or your IP. IP here is intellectual property, or they'll sabotage, you know, maybe a person or a politician or one person or another, and they can create cyber warfare. Okay, just like you have Ukraine versus Russia, and the coders are in there trying to mess up everybody's communication and so on. All right, next up is insiders. So insiders, you that are the ones working in a company, you can also be motivated financially. Maybe somebody from the other company will come and tell you, hey, I'm going to give you this amount of money. Can you take this flash drive and go and copy this document from your company and bring it to me, and so on. Okay. So it's been advised that most of 70% of IP theft, 70% of intellectual property is from insiders. That 70% is a lot. So think about every company, whether it's Apple. Apple has their secrets that they don't want Microsoft to know. Microsoft has their secrets that they don't want Apple to know. But they can each approach their other workers. In some cases, you might not have a choice. Maybe somebody might kidnap your family member or hold somebody for ransom and say, I need you to copy the whole this folder and bring it to me. You don't have a choice, you do it. In other cases, they might motivate you for other things. They might tell you, hey, we have some information about you that's incriminating. We knew that you went there and you did this and you did that. We are going to put it out in the media if you don't do this for us. So they'll threaten you and you go ahead and do it, okay? So data theft includes company secrets, IP, and so on. In some cases, it's by mistake. Maybe the insider just went ahead and opened a file that they were not supposed to open, or they saved the file in the wrong location, or they mistakenly emailed somebody some information that they were not supposed to. But yeah, regardless whether it's intentional or unintentional, whether it's willingly or unwillingly, again, insiders can be very, very, very difficult. That's a very important thing that you need to educate the people that are working for your company. Every month or every 2 months, you give them training. Don't do this. Don't share your password, because maybe the person has their password in their phone, on their book. They leave it in the house. Somebody gets into the house, steal that book, and then they have access to it. Okay. Or maybe they are at home, they're having a party, they leave their computer unlocked. Somebody goes to their computer, copy files that they're not supposed to copy, and so on and so forth. So there are many different ways that this can happen. Finally, you have competitors.
Please excuse me, but I do not well get insiders, please.
So insiders, again, let me take an example. If we all live together in one house, right? That means we are all inside a company, inside that family. And we said at 7 o'clock, you're going to lock the gate every day. Fine, we know that you're locking the gate every day. The day that you forget to lock the gate, the thieves are going to come in and attack us. So you as the insider, you are a threat if you don't lock the gate. You understand?
Yes.
So you can forget to lock the gate, or maybe somebody told you that, don't worry, I'll give you small money, leave that gate open once you just enter and steal the goat. And then you leave the door open for them to come in and steal that goat, but maybe they'll end up stealing more stuff and so on. Or maybe they'll tell you that we caught you trying to go and steal mango. If you don't leave the gate open, we'll go and report you in police and they'll lock you. So you say, okay, fine, I'll leave the gate open. And then you leave the gate open. So those are all the kind of things that you can do. You know, so insiders, you have to train your insiders, you have to train your employees not to be able to fall prey to all of these things, because others will take advantage of that. Sounds good?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So next is competitors. Competitors, you know, those guys are very financially healthy. You know, they can either pay other people to do it for them, or, you know, they're doing it because they want to get competitive advantage. You know, just like I was saying about football players, you know, you can have every soccer team, every sports team, they have scouts. People who go out there and check out what's going on and where they want to invest, where they want to buy players from, and so on and so forth. So you want to be able to have competitive advantage. You want to be better than the other team. So they can have ways in which they can compete and also attack the other team to make sure that they are in a better place. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So what questions do we have? So in terms of actors, this table actually summarizes everything we've talked about, okay? On the left, you have the different types of threats, or the different types of threat actors: script kiddies, activists, organized crime, nation states, insiders, and competitors. Here it tells you if it's internal or external. Obviously, all of them are external. All of them are external except insiders. Insiders are the only ones that are internal, okay? But now if you look at their level of sophistication, script kiddies are not really sophisticated. They're just following simple instructions they see online. Activists are not sophisticated, but if they are well-funded, they might be very knowledgeable, okay? But you can see that organized crime and nation states, those guys are highly sophisticated. They actually work in teams. So you cannot compare the amount of threat that can be coming from FBI, CIA, KGB with that is coming from somebody that's just following instructions online. And then insiders, again, it depends, you know, the level in which they are. If it's a CEO, that the CEO has been busted doing something wrong, then obviously they have very high sophistication and they can gain access to some kind of data and share it, which is going to bring down the company. Competitors too, it could be a low level or high level, but their funding sources, obviously, very high for organized crime and nations and states. It could be medium to high for activists, but it's definitely low for script kiddies. So the most important thing you want to remember is their motivation. Why do script kiddies try to attack your system? Because of curiosity. Activists is mostly for their ideology. You know, maybe they want, you know, Black Lives to Matter, or they want gay rights, or they want abortion, or maybe they want a particular party to be in power or a particular party not to be in power, and so on and so forth. For organized crime, it's financial gain. The guys that are hacking ATMs, they're doing it for money. The guys that are hacking a system to be able to scam organizations and people buying their information online, it's all for financial gain. And for nation states, it's espionage, obviously. Insiders, again, that's usually for financial gain, because if you come and pay me money and tell me, can you go and give me some inside information about your company that you work with? Fine, I'll tell you double the money, I'll give you more information. You know, in some other cases, it might be maybe the person has their back on the wall. But finally, competitive advantage, obviously, and financial gain for competitors. Maybe Fanta is trying to compete with Brazzaville de Cameroon. In Cameroon, they know that, okay, Brazzaville de Cameroon has the highest market share in this area. They go and check their data and they see that most people like pamplemousse, most people don't like orange. So Fanta will come in and make their own Fanta pamplemousse instead of Fanta orange. So they know that they're going to target people more and so on and so forth. Make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Any questions? So that's it for the attackers. So we've talked about threats, we've talked about attacks. And I think the next thing we need to talk about then is enterprise cybersecurity, okay? So we talked about the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the different threats and vulnerabilities, threats again, malware, which includes everything from viruses, worms, spyware, and so on and so forth. And we've talked about those hackers and what their intent is and what their motivations are. So let's run quickly and talk about enterprise cybersecurity. We started talking about it briefly, but let me go ahead and jump back into that. So enterprise cybersecurity, again, there are 6 areas, right? The 6 areas we talked about: product security, identity and access management, data security, governance, secure operations, and cyber intelligence. So let me go ahead and actually take a look at the, oops, never mind, the PowerPoint is there already. So let's go through the PowerPoint real quick, and we should be able to discuss each one of these better.
Hey, DK, I have a quick question.
Yes, go for it.
It's still regarding malicious actors. Would you consider a shadow IT? You talked about the various types of malicious actors, competitors, APTs, and all that. Would you consider shadow IT the malicious or as unknown? I mean, you know, would you consider it as a malicious threat?
Let's see. So let me see. I'll have to ask you a question back. What exactly do you define in this case as shadow IT? Are you talking about shoulder surfing?
No, it's when you say, let's say, for example, let's take a school, right? You know, you have a network and people just come in, you know how to use your computer, but you still come in and you connect your computer to the network without letting the admin or the administrators know that, hey, I'm bringing in an external device, and you successfully connect that to the network and you do your work or you download some stuff. Would that, I mean, I don't, would it be considered malicious, or how would you view that?
It's definitely, if it's going to introduce malware in the system, then definitely it's malicious. But in this case, it will be, I'll consider it an insider threat.
Okay.
Okay, why would I say an insider threat? Because it's somebody that already has access to the system. Okay, so you already have access to the system, but the way you want to mitigate, the way you want to reduce that kind of threat is by educating and training your staff. If you train your staff that, hey, if you see a flash drive somewhere, don't pick it up and insert it into your hardware. Because the moment you insert that flash drive into the system network, into the network of the whole organization, it might have a virus in there that might go in and affect. It doesn't necessarily have to do it that same moment in time. It might just go in and sit somewhere and then wait for a trigger. When that trigger comes, if it's a logic bomb, then it takes effect. It might also just go in there and just, you know, set not only your computer, every computer that's connected on that network might become a bot, one of those computers in a botnet. Now the person that created that software has access to all your computers in your organization. When they want to send out email spam, they can use your computers in your organization to send email spam. When they want to track where attack is coming from, it's going to point that it's coming from your organization. Meanwhile, someone is sitting behind a command and control center and sending those instructions out to the bots, and the bots are going out there and doing the work for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much for that clarity.
You are very welcome. Awesome. So going back to where we were talking about enterprise security, right? We did say enterprise security. Again, security is broken down into these 6 different components: product security, identity and access management, data security, governance, security operations, and cyber security, cyber intelligence and testing. I'm going to go through each one of these real quickly, but we'll start obviously with product security. Why? And then next, identity access management, data security, governance, security operations, and cyber security, cyber intelligence and testing. So we've talked about threat actor, malicious actor, all of those hackers, right? Now, what we need to talk about is the product security. Why do we need, what do you mean by product, first of all? A product is anything that you use, any software that you use, whether it's Microsoft or Windows, anything, every application that you have on your phone. Are you sure that that product is secure? The WhatsApp that you're using, is it secure? So this use of product is not only physical items, but also software applications, websites, services, and so on. And when you're talking about the product security, you're talking about the products that are on your system, as well as the products that you're using from a third party. In some cases, you don't really need to install stuff on your computer. You're using other companies to work with your company. So you have to make sure that that company has their own security that is in par with yours. Because if the company is not secure, if you're using Microsoft products and Microsoft products are not secure, that means your system is not also secure, okay? It has to also do with the infrastructure and the platform. If you're using an operating system that was built in Bangsor or maybe in Womb, and then they didn't build it with all the due diligence that they need, then obviously you might have problems with integrity. You might have problems with confidentiality or with the availability of your data. So going back to the question Melvin had, you're using WhatsApp. That WhatsApp can only, if it's good, if it's been vetted by the Google, if you're using Android, or Apple, if you're using an iPhone, then fine. If something happens, you can sue them or it can be their problem. But if you went to another website and downloaded an app that is not on the store, then that's your problem, because that's a third-party product. They'll tell you this third-party product has not been vetted. Do you still want to install it? Yeah, yep, I don't care. I like the background that they have. I like the other features. Let me install it. So they're giving you those features, but they might be taking other stuff from you or using your data to sell it somewhere, you know. But if that doesn't really matter to you, fine, go ahead and use it. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. This one especially for me, because if it is that they are actually using anything that concerns me, then I think I'm in deep shit, because
Okay.
I've used it for a very long time.
Good. But yeah, that's it. It might sound funny because it's just you and your phone, but what if you were using that phone for work? If it was a work phone, that's why they tell you if your work gives you a phone, you cannot go and be installing stuff on there. Because the moment you compromise that phone, that your work phone is connected to all the devices at your job site through your job network. So if it gets infected, the guy will just be happy because they can easily get through the system, because what they want to do once they get into the system is navigate and make sure that they replicate in every area, so that if you remove it finally from your phone, that's fine. They're already somewhere in another computer. And you think that, nope, it's not going to affect your business again. But now, maybe 10 to 20 people have already been infected. And then you have now the this is cybersecurity analysts running all over the place trying to get rid of all this malicious software that has been introduced into the system. All right. So again, you want to make sure that you evaluate access, design, develop, test, and all throughout the entire life cycle of product development. You want to install or make use of your security knowledge. Okay, it's not only in one area, but product development has to take care of cyber security or security. Otherwise, if your product is not secure, then you're going to introduce issues. Now, let's not talk too much about that, but just remember all of those different third-party products that you could be using for your company: Salesforce, Oracle, Sage, Microsoft Dynamics, and so on. They might all be infected. So this is why we talk about security responsibility matrix. You have to communicate with the person that's your third-party vendor and explain to them clearly, okay, if you're the one that's in charge of this, everybody has to have their own responsibility. Okay, the customer, for instance, is responsible for maintaining this, and the service is responsible for that. The cloud provider is responsible for, different locations, so that, based on that, everybody will know their responsibility, and if any problems arise in future, they should be able to address it, and who knows what they're doing. All right. So again, like looking at Amazon Web Service, they will tell you that the customer is responsible for their customer data. They don't want anything to do with it. You're also responsible for the applications, the platform, and so on and so forth, the operating system. What they are only responsible for is the software that they provide for you, the hardware, the infrastructure that is on the cloud, the storage, the compute power that they give you, the database that they give you, the networking, and so on and so forth. So based on that, if there's a problem with the storage, they will deal with it. If there's a problem with the database, that's on them. But if there's a problem with your customer data, don't come to them. That is all your responsibility. Okay. Now, next up is identity and access management. It's usually known for short as IAM or IAM. Again, identity will tell you who you are. Access management is to tell you what you are able or allowed to do. So think about like your ID card. Your ID card tells you your name, your age, your height, and all whatnot. That's like your username and your password to be able to get into the system. So when you get hired to work in a company, they have to create your username and password. Yes, Mr. Jonathan.
Yes, just no, sorry to interrupt. Regarding IAM, will that be considered working with Active Directory domain services?
Yes, that's definitely Active Directory, because first things you want to do is you want to identify yourself. If your identification is incorrect, then you don't have access to the system, period. And you don't have access to the directory. But now, if you have identified yourself as Mr. Bill Gates, okay, then based on that identification, we check your access, and that access management tells us that you have access to all the folders. You can go ahead and play any folder you want. But if you identify yourself as Vitus, and then they see that, man, you don't even have, you have access only to this one area, just go and stay in this room there and just manage the space that we have for you. So based on your login, based on your credentials, you should be able to know if you have access to the system at all, if you have identified you, and then what areas you have access to. If you have been set up to be in IT department, then maybe you only have information on IT department. If you're with sales department, then you can only be accessing just the sales part of the information. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Actually, just to add on this, I have, when you go looking for jobs, you come across a lot of companies requesting, I am a specialist, or I am who are knowledgeable in active. I am. So I mean, it's just something to master, because it's when you when you put it on your resume, it shines differently from what I've heard, and I haven't experienced it yet from what I've been told so far. So
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's for some people they enjoy it, for other people it's a pain, because you want to be able to manage people's access, because it's a big deal. This is especially for companies that have to do auditing, because if I am working in a financial institution, I should not be able to have access to everybody's bank account information, their balance, and so on. So you want to make sure that every week or every month, I think it's every month, they have to check everybody's access. The last time they got access to it, because if they have granted you access to a certain part of the organization and you never use it, you don't use it for 3 months, they take away your access, okay? Because they probably did not need it in the first place. But even though me and you are working on the same team, maybe I'm the only one that's working on this project and you're working on another one, okay? So again, it's very critical, because once you don't give people the access that they need, or if you give them way too much access, then it means if somebody gains access into my account, they will be seeing things that I shouldn't even be seeing, and be able to cause a lot of havoc. Imagine I've installed that app on my phone and I'm taking my work phone home. Everything that I have access to, that application will be able to have access to. You can copy it and email it or send it somewhere else, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? So yeah, a few more things to say again. Like you have mentioned, identity, your directory access. Based on your login, you should be able to maybe have access broken down to by device. You have a device for this particular team. You have access for contractor, you have access for vendor, you have access for external systems, and so on and so forth. And then you should be able to tell, okay, this guy is always accessing this system from Yaoundé. How come he's trying to access the system now from Russia? Then you know that, okay, that's probably a threat going on, because they can be able to check your behavioral analysis of your account. So even when you're in the US, you have a job and they tell you that this job, you cannot log in from outside the country. If you go to another country and you start logging in, they will know that you're accessing it from somewhere else, because your IP address is showing up there anyway. So there's no way that you can hide that. And when they tell you, if you tell them that, hey, I came back from Cameroon 2 weeks ago, but you're still logging in today in Cameroon, they'll tell you no can do. And if they tell you this job is providing you with laptop and cell phone, don't take this out of the country. And you take it out of the country, you connect to the Wi-Fi, you connect to the network, and then they start seeing a new IP address trying to access their network. They will all know all these things. So try to be on your safe side there. Okay. Access management, what are you able to do? Based on the system, okay, your permission level, you should be able to see the internet, or do you have read access, write access? They don't want you to be able to edit the website. They want you to have access to no database or database, HR system, and so on. So all of those different access levels are out there for you based on your identity and access management. Now, like I said, you don't need to be having access to, normally you don't want to give everybody access to all the keys. If somebody comes into your house as a guest, you give them the key to the room that they're going to sleep. You don't give them the key to the kitchen, the safe, the whole house. No, you give them only keys to the room where they will be sleeping. That's known as providing minimum access level to the smallest amount to complete their task. If they want to eat, fine, you go to the kitchen and give them food. But if it's a case that, okay, you leave the kitchen open and so on and so forth, so be it. So principle of least privilege, you give somebody access only to what they need, because that will make sure that there is confidentiality. That's C in CIA. They can only see what they cannot see. They cannot spoil something they cannot see, because the moment they also get hacked, the person that hacks them is only going to see what that person could see, the least privilege, and not the root access of the entire organization. Okay, so that's what we know as principle of least privilege. Now let's jump out to the next one, data security. Again, we know data is the backbone of everything. We need our data to be secure. Our data usually can be customer data, the data that was ordered, campaign data, behavioral, machine learning, financial, all types of data, maybe intellectual property. Okay, so how is the data secure? We have to make sure that the data is secure at rest. Wherever you're saving your files, whether it's on the cloud or on a server machine somewhere or on your cell phone, you have to make sure that it cannot be accidentally accessed. They cannot steal it physically. They cannot steal it electronically. And you cannot get someone unauthorized to gain access to that data. So if you're giving companies, if you're giving members, or should I say team members or employees, cell phones, you need to train them, you need to teach them. This cell phone is for you to use for work. You don't need to take this cell phone to a nightclub, because the day you go to a nightclub, they steal that cell phone. If it's not encrypted, somebody can go in there and steal the information. If you have the Facebook manager, I don't know if I should say manager, a manager or in IT for Facebook, going to a casino to play ballet, and then forget the cell phone, somebody takes it, copies all the data. You don't know what kind of data is in there. Important information can be there. So data at rest needs to be secure. Okay, so once it is lost for one reason or another, you need to have multiple layers of defense. That's known as defense in depth. First, if they steal the phone, the person will need to unlock it. They'll need to have some kind of authentication to identify it, either a fingerprint or password and so on. They need to have access now to that file, that access management that we just talked about. And also you want all your stuff to be encrypted. If it's encrypted, then it's safe. Maybe you want to even destroy it. So think about that. Now, data in transit is the next part. In transit means when you're sending your information from one person to another. Are you using encryption? If you're going to send a file or a document from your company to another company, are you sure somebody cannot intercept that data on the road? So that's how you want to make sure that it's secure. Finally, security of received and generated data. That means data that you're receiving, right? Or data that someone sends to you, rather, or data that you generate. Are you sure that that data is secure? What I mean is, are you sure there's integrity in it? So you have to make sure of all of those things. So where is the data saved? Where is it going to? And where is it coming from? Because I don't want somebody pretending to be Melvin, sending me email, and then I'll think that's an email from him, and I'll click on the link because, okay, it's Melvin, it's safe. But it might be somebody that's impersonating him, okay? Mr. J, go ahead with your question.
Yes, you talk about just come back to data in transit. You talk about encryption. What about hashing? I mean, what's the difference between encrypting data and hashing data?
I know that's a little bit beyond the scope of this class, but
Okay.
hashing data would just mean hiding it, right? So hashing it is such that, you can use different algorithms to hash data. So hashing it again would mean if I write a word that I am going to school, right? When I write that word, I am going to school, I use a particular calculation to calculate that word. Either I say wherever I see I, I'm going to put, wherever I see A, I'm going to have 1. Wherever I see B, I'm going to have 2, and so on and so forth. So that when you receive that message that I am going to school, you run it through that same hashing mechanism, you come out with the same numbers that I had, then you know that the data has not been tampered with. Does that make sense?
Basically ensuring integrity.
Ensuring integrity. Now, encryption. Encryption is like having a storage and locking it with a padlock.
Oh, okay.
Encryption is making sure that confidentiality is maintained. Only the person that has the key can get into that store. But
Oh.
hashing is to make sure that only the person, or rather the data has not been manipulated, it has been tampered with.
Okay. Thank you.
Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, again, thirdly, where it's coming from, you want to make sure it's coming from the right person. It's somebody that you trust and not somebody that's pretending to be someone else. All right. So next up, governance. Governance is usually three things in one. Sometimes it's risk management, sometimes it's compliance, but together it's known as integrated risk management. So governance is a loose word. You can mostly hear this in politics, in legal stuff, and so on, but it also works in IT, okay? And governance in IT, it's usually giving a particular strategic direction, what you expect from your overall security strategy. So you have to be able to tell everybody their roles and their responsibilities and come up with some kind of procedures. Like, hey, if you lose your password, this is what you need to do. If you lose your phone, this is what you need to do. You have to have procedures and policies, okay? Say mobile device policy, monitoring and logging policy. Everybody knows that their system is being monitored. You know, if they're trying to install something, some software that they're not supposed to, and, you know, understanding that your data is being backed up, you know, your email is going to be backed up for every 6 months and so on. So those are all different policies and that are put in place for you to be able to function appropriately and make sure that we have that CIA going. Risk management, it has to do with either preventing the risk. Again, risk can be internal or external. You know, you have to have it in a quantitative kind of method. And finally, compliance, that's to make sure that we follow rules and regulations, we follow the law. It has the relevant policies so that when it comes time that our data is being audited or our company is being audited or investigated upon, they'll show that, yes, these guys were actually doing things the right way. They actually have passwords, they have encryption, they did not leave everything open so that any hacker or any person can just walk in and grab data, because you're utilizing a lot of data, as we said in the beginning. There's company, there's customer data, there's order data, there's all kinds of data that is being stored as intellectual property. All right. So we've talked about a few of those, you know, the different compliance, again, that it entails. I think that's 4 that we've talked about so far. Do we have any questions on the first 4? We have 2 more to go. All right, no questions. Security operations. Security operations, there's usually 2 types. You know, the secure administration, the guys that do the day-to-day IT operations. Most people that learn cybersecurity or that prepare for the exam, they're usually thinking about these 2. These are the 2 places they want to work. But you still have to know all those other areas, okay? So the focus is on security, either network security, device provisioning, account management, backing up, patching, developing, deploying applications, and so on. That's where secure administration works, the day-to-day IT operations. But now you have the SOC, which is Security Operations Center. It's a dedicated team of guys that are out there to monitor your network, okay? They continuously detect, analyze, and respond to incidents. So for instance, they're the ones that are checking that everybody that's logging in is not logging in from Israel or from Russia or from Japan or China, okay? So they'll analyze it and see that if every day I'm logging in from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., if they see that I want to log in at midnight at one day, they'll suspect that that's probably not me. Okay, so then they'll lock the system and probably check with you. Are you sure you're the one trying to access this? And then they use incident response. When something bad happens to the system, they track it and then they'll document everything so that in case there's an attack, those are the guys that will be jumping all over the place, making sure that the attack is being taken care of. Okay, so security operations, they consult with the guys that are developing the products and they provide secure infrastructure. Meanwhile, the software application guys, they'll test the product. You know, you create your WhatsApp, you test it and make sure it's good. You write instructions and, you know, log everything that's going on. And finally, we talk about cyber intelligence and testing. So cyber intelligence and testing, in some cases, in some companies, they have dedicated teams, okay? Or they use existing teams so that there's cross functionality, whoever is working in that part. In other parts, they have, again, like I said, they create a dedicated team, this orange area, to take care of that. In other areas, they just have one person working amongst each one of them. So depending on how you do it, you just have to have people in there that are going to proactively, that means they do it before it happens. They're going to be checking, analyzing, checking threats and actors. So either they are going into technical industry awareness or checking the news, saying that, okay, there's a new vulnerability that was discovered. Once it's checked that there was a new vulnerability, they go into your company and they patch that vulnerability. They also check news, check the dark web to see what's going on. They check other companies. You know, when I was working at Bank of Hawaii, every Monday morning, we had a meeting with all the banks in the US. So one bank will probably tell them, hey, we experienced this kind of stuff. Have you guys experienced it? What did you guys do? So they share that information. You know, they gather intelligence, threats, like, hey, somebody tried to do this, somebody tried to do that. And then we are all aware at that time. Again, think about it as we're living in the same house. When you left the house, you're going to school, somebody tried to lie to you like, hey, your mother sent me to take 100 from you. When you come back home, you share that information with everybody at home so that they know that, hey, there's somebody on the road that's always trying to steal 100 by lying that they were sent and so on. So that intelligence gathering and sharing is very important. Another thing they do is pen testing, penetration testing. They pretend to be an attacker and then they try to see if there are weaknesses in your barrier, okay? So they simulate or invite other teams to be able to go in and hack ethically to see if they can gain access to other areas that they are not supposed to. Mind you, you have to have authorization before you do this. Because if they catch you trying to get into, say, payroll or get into some part of the system without authorization, you can, in fact, you get fired. Not that you can get fired, because it has to be signed off. If somebody tells you to try it, tell them to write you an email, signing it, documenting it, that you have been given the right to go in and test if you can gain access into this system or that system and so on. So that takes us to what is known as a red team and blue team, okay? The red team is a team that is out there pretending to be like attackers. These are all people that work in the same company. So one, they're going to separate guys into two teams, one team that's trying to get or find the vulnerabilities and take advantage of them. Meanwhile, there's another team that's playing defense, that's out there blocking all the holes that are being found. That way, when they can simulate this attack, they can test it, they can know what issues they have and fix it before the real thing happens, okay? And then incident response, you have to always make sure you document everything. You know, when it happened, how it happened, what you did to fix it. Because tomorrow, if you have a similar attack, you just go back to your documentation and you should be good. Finally, threat modeling, again, like we mentioned, pretending to set up a threat and then being able to overcome it. So all those 6 different areas are the 6 areas that make up your enterprise security. Does that make sense, what we went through? So it's not just about, you know, your password and stuff like that. It has to do with securing your entire network, because your data resides on your network. If somebody gains access to one place, they'll have access to everything. Any questions?
Yes, I have one. So all these areas of cybersecurity that you just mentioned, and you gave a little explanation of each. So having CompTIA Security Plus gives you're pretty much open to applying to any of these areas, or because I know about pen testing, well, I heard some of it. When it comes to pen testing, you have to have, I think, a CompTIA Pen Test Plus, something like that. I mean, so are you advising us to get Security Plus and apply for these jobs regardless of whatever will be requested to go into these various areas?
Very, very good question. You see, I did not have that in my plan to talk about the different areas, but there's usually a pathway. Actually, let me see if I can jump into it real quick. I did not intend to show you that part, but let me go ahead and talk about it a little bit. So that is when it comes to preparing for your exam, okay? So there are many different types of certifications. Let me go first in here. And so yeah, normally there are many different types of certifications. The base, the very first thing you need to know if you're going to get into cybersecurity is getting Security Plus certification. With Security Plus certification, it is the backbone, is the fundamentals. Most of these things we've talked about is probably just one domain in the exam.
Oh, okay.
And from then, after maybe a year or 6 months, depending on your experience and your speed of learning, you can learn then cybersecurity analyst. And then from there, you can decide if you want to go into cyber analyst, cybersecurity analyst professional, or you want to become just a dedicated pen tester. Because by then you have more experience. It's not only about learning all of these, it's also about learning about the tools that you use to develop these threats, or the tools that you use to combat or fight against these threats. So there are many different certifications out there. It depends on the path that you want to take. But all in all, you have to first start with Security Plus. Once you gain that, you can then go into the higher levels of CISSP and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, for Security Plus, it's just 90 questions. You have to complete them in 90 minutes. All the questions are either multiple choice, drag and drop, selecting, true or false, or, if this, then that, and so on. So performance-based simulations, maybe they'll give you a command prompt and say, what do you type, and so on and so forth. But it's 90 minutes. All right. So let's not talk much about that, but the CompTIA exam is typically refreshed every 3 years. So if you take it this year, if you prepare for it this year, you make sure you write it before 3 years expires, because they change it every 3 years. Okay. But after the 3 years, there's a 6-month overlap. There's usually minor changes, because we all know IT changes. This CompTIA exam for 5 years ago is not the same with the one today. Because 5 years ago, we didn't really have cloud computing and security issues with cloud computing that much. 10 years, 20 years ago, we didn't really have mobile devices, so we didn't have to worry about security of mobile devices. Now we're going to have Internet of Things. You have to deal about that security. Whatever is going to change in future is going to be implemented in there to make sure that that is also being captured. So the material usually varies a little bit from version to version.
But computing as well.
But what do you know? What do you need to know? There's no prerequisite. You really don't need to know anything. You just need to know the fundamentals of computers. If you know about networking, even good for you. But generally, if you know Windows, Linux, and network knowledge, how to troubleshoot when things go wrong, then you should be good to write the exam. Yeah, just preparing, relax, and then you'll be good to go. Sounds good? Does that answer your question?
It did, sir. Thank you.
Awesome. So yes, we still have that too also in the notes. Let me see if I can get to it, but yeah. So we've covered almost everything. I think we have just one last part left. Right. Let me open this in a new tab. There you go. All right, and the last part that we have left has to do with social engineering. Does anybody know who a social engineer is?
I have an idea.
Yes, I think you do have an idea. How about you, Joe? Have you ever heard about a social engineer? I think you're on mute. You probably have to unmute.
Yes, Mr. Foji, what about social engineering?
So tell us, what do you know about social engineering?
On social engineering, what can I say about it? Can say that social engineering mainly does about to know I don't even know how to explain it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So let's go ahead and jump into it then and discuss a little bit. Okay. So definition of a social engineer is pretty much a scammer. Okay. So a social engineer is someone that has mastery of how to ask you questions that may look very unimportant and non-invasive because they want to gather information from you. So today I'll come and ask you, what's your little sister's name? Tomorrow I'll come and ask you, what's your big brother's name? By the end of the week, I know everybody's name in your family. That's a simple example, right? But if I came to you at one point and I tell you, give me the names of all your family members, you probably will not want to do that because you'll be like, who are you? I don't even know you. Why are you asking me this question? You know, but they have ways that they'll ask you. They'll tell you, hey, are you not Peter's brother? It's like, no, Peter is not my brother. And then they'll say, but what is your brother's name if it's not Peter? Then you say it's Paul. Then they know that your brother's name is Paul. So all of these, they do it over time because they want to gain trust. And then they're going to reduce your defenses. And they're going to combine many techniques to be able to gather sensitive information from you. Think about it. All we started talking about is data, data, data. Data needs to be confidential, it needs to have integrity, and it needs to be very, very available at every time. So what are some of the social engineering techniques that we know out there? Vishing is one of them, vishing with a V. So this is voice phishing, where somebody is going to try to get information from you either by posing like someone else. So I'll call you and tell you, hey, you have won a scholarship to go to so and so school. I just need this information from you, that information from you, and so on and so forth. You go ahead and give the information because you think that, you know, it's a legitimate company that has called you and so on. Or I'll call you and say, okay, they told me that, you know, you have plumbing issues or your AC is not working, or we have a free AC for you to test, you know, and this is going to be only a one-time offer. You know, if you can accept now, we can set up a time for you. You know, all you have to do is just to pay our transport, or maybe don't pay our transport. You just need you to pay $1 for this. You go ahead and you give your card number and then they use it for something else, okay? So phishing again is using voice to be able to fish information, and they'll call many people. They can call 100 people, maybe 2 people they can get, or 10 people. They can call 200 people. They don't have any problem with that. They will call all they want until you stop them from calling. They can also set up robots. They can also set up automated systems to call and say, hello, you won blah, blah, blah for the lottery. Give us your phone number, your email, your so and so. They start gathering information from you, okay? Next up is tailgating. Tailgating is when, say for instance, someone follows you behind. If you know that you're going into work and you have to scan your badge to get into the building, somebody might actually pretend to be carrying a box of stuff and they cannot open the door, and they'll wait for you to scan and then they'll follow you, even be nice enough to hold the door for them to go in. But they probably did not have a badge in the first place. Once they get in, they find where the server room is, they take their flash drive and plug it in there and start causing havoc. So that's what tailgating is. Someone or following someone into the building without having access. So again, what you want to do, you want to be able to train your employees. Under no circumstances should you open the door for anybody. They should use their card and go in. It doesn't matter. If it's a guy, maybe a girl is going to dress up in high heels and pretend that, you know, their documents fell down, and then you help them pick the document and even open the door and so on and so forth now. Next up is impersonating. We all know this one, right? When you're using a wireless network or wired network and being able to transfer packets of information from one area to another, okay? So again, somebody sending a message from Douala to Buea, but when it gets to Mutengene, they switch it with something else, and then you get different messages, okay? But you want to be able to be able to address this, you want to do sequencing in the sense that you don't want to send everything in one package. When you send things in different packages, maybe they'll intercept one, but not intercept all, and then the message again will be not useful for anybody, but at least you're not going to be affected negatively. Okay. Next up is dumpster diving. This is still very popular because think of financial institutions, or even think of yourself, all your bank statements that you receive. If you take them and just throw them in your trash, if somebody has been monitoring you, somebody wants to gather information about you, they go into your trash and get all your financial or important documents. From there, they can then pretend to be you and call and say, hey, my name is so and so, my address is this and that and that. I just received a document from you guys, or let me say an account history saying that my balance is so and so and so. Can you double check this and that? By then, they've already established with the person on the other line that, yes, this is probably the same person. And then they can tell you, okay, if that's my balance, transfer 1 million to this account or transfer this and so on and so forth. So you have to be very careful. The way you want to get rid of this is by shredding all your documents. Any document that you know that it's got sensitive information on it, maybe your username or password, any personal identifiable information, discard it appropriately, shred it, burn it, or whatever you need to do. Next is shoulder surfing. That is very, very common. Whether you're sitting in a bus or you're at the airport or you're sitting next to someone, the moment you open your cell phone, everybody is seeing what is being seen on your cell phone. If you go in typing your username and password, everybody can see that as well. And there you go. They don't really need to be standing on your shoulder anymore. So they're surfing with you just by looking at your computer or looking at your cell phone. Now, the next one is hoaxes. Okay, this is very, very rampant nowadays that everybody is hungry for information. Social media is out there. People use voicemail and use all kinds of tricks and act like a remote technician or company, interested parties seeking employment maybe, or an angry customer filing a complaint. So if you call and start pretending, hey, I'd like to get a job at your place, so and so, start getting information that is not probably necessary to give out the information. So you just have to have a training method to tell them, walk them through the right answer. So the hunt for information is real. We have to be able to protect it. Another one is a watching hole attack. Okay, this is usually like a honeypot. For instance, the World Cup is coming up. People who want to be watching matches live and so on. If you create a website and say, this website is going to be streaming all matches live, free, no pop-ups, no nothing. All soccer lovers are going to go to that website every day to be watching matches. Okay, or if you want to say free movies, download free movies from this website, everybody will be going there. All you have to do now is just make sure that you plant malware on that website. Everybody that goes on that website gets infected. And before you know it, you already have your infections, you're waiting for 0-day attacks to take place and so on. So be very careful with all these hotspots where people go to, all the time visit websites that might be sources of malicious content. All right, any questions so far? So those are the different techniques that, social engineers do to get information from you. But there's certain, yes, go ahead, Mr. Melvin.
Please, this is really a lot, especially this issue of cybersecurity. My question is, who is safe? Who can really be safe?
Very good question. Who is safe? That depends. It depends on, you might think you're safe in one way or not in the other. But the most important thing is, what information is most critical to you? What is it that you don't need everybody to know? You don't need anybody to change. You don't need anybody to mess up the availability. Because there's no point for me to hide my name if everybody can know my name. What I need to worry about, that's why we talked about that CIA. You have to be able to gauge what is more important. Is it the confidentiality that's more important than the availability or the integrity? So if I'm getting an email from you, and I know it's just an email saying that, Master, I'm going to so and so place tomorrow. What is more important to me at that point is, okay, it's not confidential. Maybe everybody knows. Maybe what's important to me at that point is there integrity? Is it coming from you? Then I have to check your email very well. Maybe they spelled your email and then they put an extra space there somewhere, or extra period. And then I know, it's not coming from you. Okay. In other cases, it might be information that the whole world knows. So why do we want to hide it? So there's no reason for it to be confidential. If you know the person that won the World Cup last time, there's no reason for FIFA to be hiding that information on their website. Okay. But maybe they want to hide other information. So that part is not really secure. Nobody is safe. Nobody can ever be safe. It all depends on the value of the data. If it's very valuable, you want to make sure it's under serious lock and key. And the only way you can do that also is set up that governance. Set up a way that you're monitoring and tracking, analyzing it to make sure that everything is working. That's why in this field, it's always going to be work. Always going to be work more than you ever think in your life. In fact, I can't even remember. Let me see. Let me search real quick. Cybersecurity job. Job growth. Okay. I think it's one of the biggest job growth percentage right now in the US, in the world. So employment for cybersecurity is projected to grow 33%, much faster than the average of all occupations. Okay. Because when we talked about the internet and the web last week, when the internet and the web were being created, security was an afterthought. What that means is security was not important at that point in time. Okay. Everybody knew, I mean, it was just my computer connected to your computer. Who cares? Nobody's going to be looking at anything or messing anything up. But then it grew exponentially. Think about the time that Amazon, we talked about Amazon Web Services, Amazon, the company on our first day, how the guy Jeff Bezos realized that there is something that's growing so fast called the internet, and he wanted to gain from it. So he decided he's going to sell 5 things: computers, electronics, DVDs, books, and I can't remember the other stuff. But then he realized that books was what was making him the most money, because people wanted a list of books everywhere. So he concentrated on books. If somebody else too smart enough could have thought, this thing is growing tremendously, there's going to be an issue with security, let me create a security company, and started at that time, they will probably be a lot more wealthier than Jeff Bezos. So it's about timing. When internet started, the security was not a major thing. Now we are just doing patchwork to be able to make sure that security works for all of that. That's why you see any new thing that's coming out now, security is at the forefront. But as I'm telling you, the job security is the fastest when it comes to cybersecurity. You always have a job in there. You just have to make sure that you keep refreshing, you keep learning, so your information, your knowledge does not become obsolete. Right? We talked about that too on the second week when we talked about career paths. Once you learn the fundamentals are never going to expire. You're always going to know that. At that point, you just want to be building up on it. Once you've learned, for instance, a security plus, you decide you want to go into pen testing, you want to go into administration, you want to become blue team, red team, and so on and so forth. It's up to you. The sky is the limit at that point. If you want to set up a script to be running all your stuff, that's also fine. But it's limitless when it comes to the things that you can do with this. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So don't worry, nobody is safe. I don't know the day that I'm going to get hacked. You know, if your computer is connected to some other computer, fine. That's why you want to set up your schedule your virus scanning or your hardware, malware, or, you know, scanning to be going on your system at home and so on. Because if someone really needs to, if the government, we've talked about the different actors, if the government really wants to get into your phone, there's no way you're going to get them out. They will get into your phone because they'll go through your history either by Facebook or anywhere else. Even after you've deleted it, they'll still have access to it. That's why if you see any of these crazy attacks that take place in the US, it doesn't take too long for the person to get caught. You know, the government, there's something known as zero-day vulnerability. What it means is, say Microsoft has created Word, Excel, and there are some vulnerabilities in there that have not yet been found out. Until the day they find out, that's known as a zero-day vulnerability. So the day that they'll find out, if you find out or I find out, and then I take that information and I'm taking advantage of it, nobody else knows of that vulnerability, or you take it and sell it to a programmer, and then they are taking that information and getting into the system through the back door. That would be very tedious. That's what these big companies, this KGB, FBI, and CIA do. They have dedicated teams in there that know all the zero-day vulnerabilities and they use it. But the moment that, you know, they probably realize that, these other competitors already know about it, now they don't have any advantage, they'll probably tell Microsoft. Then Microsoft will go now and patch it. When Microsoft patches it, they send a new update. They say, hey, update all your software. That's because they have seen a security vulnerability, or they've added a new feature or some other reason. Then you have to update. That's why it's always good to update all your software. That's part of the job too that cybersecurity specialists would do. You know, they want to make sure all computers on the network have their softwares updated, because the one that's not going to be updated, when they make that vulnerability known to the entire public, everybody knows now that there's a weakness, there's a hole in the trouser somewhere. Everybody will be going through that hole. And if you haven't patched everything by then, your system is going to be compromised. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So I know I was trying to round up real quick. This is the last part of the class today. Let's go to this last part. So there are a few things, actually 6 of them, 6 reasons why these scammers, these social engineers are successful, why they are usually effective in what they do. They usually either show authority, they intimidate you, they make you feel that, you know, this is something that the entire world is okay with, you know, by consensus, or they, you know, develop some kind of familiarity, make you start liking them or gain your trust, or pretend that it's something very urgent or very scarce. So let's take a look at each of them. Authority, in this case, the actor would, you know, let me make this larger. The actor will pretend to tell you, hey, this call is coming from so and so and so. This Mr. So and Mr. That wanted you to do this. You know, they start dropping some kind of names, using some kind of technical words to show that they are very important, you know, and say that, hey, you know, the CEO needs this document by 3 o'clock today. And the only thing that's holding this document back is this technical documentation, blah, 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 blah. And you need to give me this number to be able to do that. By the time they are done, all those big names and big words, you start trembling, and then you just give the information before you even realize it. Okay. So it can be somebody that's not even in the company, calling from outside the company. But because they have done their research on the company, they know that the head of this department is so and so. They just call you, and then you answer the phone. They say, here, this is, your boss said I should get this information from you, blah, 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 blah. or your boss and my boss are in a meeting, I need you to do this and that, all those kind of things. Okay. Next up, oopsie. I knew what's gonna happen. Next up is intimidation. Just like how this big dog is looking at that tiny little dog. You know, a social engineer can use several techniques. Normally, they might use multiple techniques at the same time. It doesn't have to be only one. Okay, they'll threaten you that if you don't do this, I'm going to get you, you know, I'm going to report you to so and so and so. If you don't do this, you might end up losing your job. You know, once they combine all of this and start threatening you that, hey, I'll release this information if you don't do that. If you don't do that, I'm going to say that you did this, you did that, and so on. They'll intimidate you. It can be maybe these ambassadors or government officials who go out of the country for business, and then they maybe videotape them somewhere doing something out of ordinary, out of place. They'll tell them, hey, I'm about to send this out to the entire world to see. And then they know they are in deep trouble. Whatever you ask them to do at that time, they'll have to do it. You know, so those are all simple examples. Next is consensus. If you try to buy something online, or if you're trying to go to the market and buy it, everybody is telling you, Master, this thing is the best, this is the best, and so on. Now that mob mentality makes you think that, you know what, you don't have any choice. You're going to do it. If you're driving to go to a club, you go past the first club, you see only 2 cars pass outside. And then you go in another club, you see 150 cars. You definitely want to go to the one that there's more people because you think that that's the best place. Okay. So all those things, again, like you're shopping online, you want to probably buy the item that has more stars than the other item that does not have any stars. So that's taking advantage of that. But the hacker can also pretend that, hey, you know what? You know, I belong in so and so and so. Everybody likes. I mean, I can create a website or create a business and ask everybody to go there and click 5-star, 5-star. When anybody sees my business, they think it's 5-star when I'm really not that 5-star. All right, so familiarity again, you can come in and, you know, I can see you on the road and say, are you not Mr. Peter's son? That was very good. How are you doing? Is he home? When they have already asked that and you already show familiarity, you know, people like using that or buying things that they're already familiar with. So if I see you at the bar and say, are you not the person that I spoke to last time? Or I think I was with your boss the last time. Where is he now? Did he go on vacation? And then you start giving information about your boss. Tomorrow they are calling you another teammate and saying that your boss is on vacation and he just fell down. He's in emergency. We need to get this information from you, and so on and so forth. So those are all ways that social engineers use, okay? They'll converse with you and try to see that you're like them or not. And then once they establish that common contact or that common friend between the two of you, now you start trusting them because, okay, they know your father, they know your mother, they know your family, and there's somebody that you can trust, and so on and so forth. They start attacking you then. So that trust, again, like I said, a big thing, because people are more likely to act when they trust the person or they trust the situation. So social engineers can use a variety of these techniques. They can use multiple, you know, give you names, show authority, try to be familiar with you, and so on and so forth. All of that, they can, maybe they found it by shoulder surfing. Maybe they went into a dumpster to get that information and then utilize it on you. Finally, scarcity. So if I call you and tell you that this is the best price that you ever see, after this, the prices are going to go up tomorrow. So just buy this now because there are only 2 items left. When I start telling you how urgent and available and scarce, I mean, you realize, man, if I don't buy this shoe now, tomorrow, that shoe is not going to be there. I better buy this shoe because it's the last pair that's left. Even I'll tell you that even if you go anywhere, you will not see this shoe anywhere. So social engineers, they'll use this technique. You know, if they try to sell you, say, hey, you need to buy this camera, you need to buy this phone is the best. You know, they'll stop producing it, they're not going to produce it again. You go and buy the phone or buy the software or buy the hardware, when that hardware is probably having malware in it. The software might have malware in it, and then at the end of the day, the victim feels like, you know, they have been rushed into getting that information. So they'll tell you it's a time-based offer, it's something that's reducing, and you get to start making urgent decisions, which are not necessarily good decisions, and based on scarcity, which is a blatant lie. All right. So that takes us to the end of the effectiveness, why the principles of why the social engineering techniques are effective. So far we've been able to talk about the CIA triad. We talked about hackers and actors, the enterprise enterprise cybersecurity, as well as social engineering. So I think so far we've gotten everything covered for today. Do we have any last questions before I let you guys go? No questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you for this informative presentation. I mean, some of us are still, you know, in the struggle of this cybersecurity thing, and you know, as just to add on what Melvin mentioned earlier, we're safe. Actually, nobody is safe. All we have to do right now is just to remediate it and reduce the risk to an acceptable level. We just have to be careful out there with those we trust, and watch out for this social engineering, because it is very rampant nowadays, and just have to be careful what you do online, because your footprint online is, that's where, I mean, online now is the that's the new what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, the new area, people. That's where most people go on. That's where most people stay on now, and that's where the attackers are. You know, they are on there day in, day out. So we just have to be careful with how we present ourselves on these online profiles, or how we navigate the internet. Thank you.
Yes, thank you too very much, and thank you for your observations. That's very good. Any other things to chime in before we round up for the day?
Yes, I equally want to thank you a lot, and I would say that especially Mr. Gwe is far ahead of us, because most of us here are just we are just beginners. We're just looking at, you know, we need to get into the field. We're still just seeing everything for the first time, and all that. But then there is a lot that you've touched here that I have experienced in real life without knowing that this is what was happening here. And it is really important. I'm grateful for this moment, and I hope
Yes, that's true. That's very true. You know, I try to tell people, you know, that it's important, you know, personally forwarding messages and so on. You don't know, you might be disseminating wrong information, you know, just make sure that you validate anything before you share it. Because somebody might tell you that, hey, uninstall this or install that, forward it that, check this out, go to this website. You don't know that you're sending somebody to go and install a virus on their computer, you know, but they'll never know, because they always click every link that they send to them, download every document that is out there. And it's a lot more in-depth. What we have done, we've just touched the surface. Like you said, I want to introduce you to all these avenues, and then you see which one really sweetens you, and then you dive into it. Maybe you are interested in knowing how to develop websites, how it works. Fine, by all means, get into it. Maybe you really enjoy this part, but it gets more technical than this, because you have to understand how networks work. And then you have to understand the different ways that those attackers, the vulnerabilities they take place, how do you avoid it? How do you prevent it? And how do you mitigate it? If it has happened, how do you solve it? Okay, so those are all the things that you as a cybersecurity analyst has to know, that, okay, I need to lock this door so that nobody can come in. But if somebody got in, maybe through the window or somewhere else, then I need to make sure that I have a cutlass, or I have a pepper spray or something that's going to help me protect myself. Okay, so again, it's a never-ending learning experience. You cannot get comfortable and think that you just learn this and you're good. You have to continue learning and continue keeping yourself up to speed, because knowledge gets obsolete really fast, except it is fundamental knowledge. So grab your books, don't spend your time, invest it, get your fundamental knowledge. It's always going to stay with you forever. And then the new knowledge that keeps coming on, once you know that fundamentals, you can go online and search. There's information is everywhere today. But if you will not be able to understand that information, the information will only help you answer one question. But to understand the big picture of how things work, and really, be an expert in the field and not just competent in it, you have to be able to know your fundamentals and generate content yourself. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, it is almost halfway to the hour. So we'll end today. As a reminder, next week, we are going to be, oops, I missed it. I thought it was in here. Nope, it's in the other one. So next week, we're going to be talking about databases. Obviously, we're not going to talk about everything with databases. We're just going to be talking about the fundamentals as well, just the basic information about databases. So after that, we're going to jump into cloud computing. Again, we cannot finish any of these topics in one day or 1 week, but we'll do our best to make sure you grasp the knowledge of the fundamentals and come with questions. Always come with questions. If you have any particular thing that you think is bothering you, you need to be answered. Sounds good?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
thank-
Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
very much.
You're very welcome. Jay, I'm waiting for your call.